Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna min fadlika 'ilman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. Rabbana atina min ladunka rahmatan wa hayyi' lana min amrina rashada. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Greet you all with the blessing of peace. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with all of you. May Allah accept all of your fasts and your prayers and make this a blessed month for all. I wanted to share a few words today. The title given was The Truth of Giving. And the essence of this presentation and the reflections today are in the hadith of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, a hadith that's found in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari, may Allah be pleased with him, in which Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, he speaks about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And he says of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that kana Rasulullah ajwad al-nasi bil khair, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was the most generous of all people when it came to doing the good and giving the good and showing generosity. But then he says, وَكَانَ أَجْوَدْ مَا يَكُونَ فِي رَمَضَانِ, and he would be especially so in the month of Ramadan. But he doesn't stop there. He then gives a reason for this. He says because in Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ would review the whole Quran with Jibreel ﷺ. And so Abdullah ibn Abbas says, and so in these nights and in these days, when the Prophet ﷺ is reviewing the Quran, he was more generous. كَانَ أَجْوَدَ مِنَ الرِّيحِ الْمُرْسَلَةِ, he was more generous than the fastly flowing wind. Nothing could get in its way. Its goodness went everywhere. Now, so there's a few things that Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas has tied together for us, which we have to reflect upon. One is obviously a tie between generosity and Ramadan. This is the month of giving more than we normally give. It's the month of increase in giving. But then he made another connection and he said, this is what happens when you connect with the Holy Quran. That's what he said. He says, because this was the month of the Quranic review, and that's why this extra generosity came. And so what that means is, because we all know that Ramadan is the month of engaging the Holy Quran, what he's telling us here is something important. That the mark of that engagement has to show in us in a particular angle, which is how we give. If our giving doesn't increase with our engaging the Holy Quran in the Taraweeh and in our nights and in our days, then the Quran hasn't connected with us. It's as simple as that. This is the book of giving. This is the book which is meant to unlock anything within us that wants to hold. So it becomes everything within us has to give. This is the essence. And so what I want to look at is, why is this the case? Why is this the book of giving? And how is the act of giving, with its various words, Infaq and Shadaqah, and at the end I'll talk about Zakat. But why is giving so intrinsic to this message and to the fruits of this book when it touches the heart of a person? I'm going to start in the first part talking about salvation and the individual. And in my latter part, I'll talk about zakat and community and civilization. So when we come to the first part, what I want to note is that the Quran, right from the beginning, right from the surahs that were revealed in Mecca, right when Islam was a new thing and the believers were scattered in this society, the Quran challenged that society in two very distinct ways. It was not a passive book, it was an active book. And people were challenged to respond to at least two very distinct challenges that the Quran brought. One was the challenge of Tawheed. You must all know the one God. There's the one God who made you, there's the one God to whom you will return, and you must know Him. That was the challenge of Tawheed. And there was a second challenge. The second challenge the Quran gave to that society was a very simple one. If you do not care for the downtrodden, you might find yourself in hell. Simple as that. Because the Arabian society, those were people who boasted of generosity. They would lay out lavish feasts for guests, but who they did it to was a very particular group. Nobles, people who they knew, people whom, and we'll come to this in the Quran, if you show the lavish treatment to, you'll be praised. As for the downtrodden, who does the Quran speak about a lot? The miskeen, the impoverished, the yatim, the orphan, the ibn sabil, the refugee, the alien. These were a people, if you're good to them or not, it means nothing. And that's why these well-to-do chieftains who boasted of their generosity cared nothing for these people. And the Quran flipped it on them and said, no, these are the people. If you're not with them, then Allah is not with you. As simple as that. And that's why this comes again and again and again in the Holy Quran right from the beginning. I want to stress this just to make it clear that this is essential to what it means to be a Muslim. It's this. It's Tawheed and it's being with the downtrodden. So for example, there's surahs of the sort, for example, Surah Al-Haqqa, it's a Meccan surah, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. It says, خُذُوهُ فَغُلُّوهُ, about people in hell. Take them and tie them. ثُمَّ الْجَحِيمَ صَلُّوهُ, and then roast them in hell. ثُمَّ فِي سِلْسِلَةٍ ذَرْعُهَا سَبْعُونَ ذِرَاعًا فَاسْلُكُوهُ. And then in this chain of 70 cubits, make him tied and to walk. Why? What was his crime? Just two things. إِنَّهُ كَانَ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ الْعَظِيمِ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Just two things. He didn't believe in God, the tremendous, and didn't used to urge people to feed the needy. That's all. Just two reasons. فَلَيْسَ لَهُ الْيَوْمَ هَاهُنَا حَمِيمٌ. And that's why on this day, on Judgment Day, he has no friends. Allah is the friend of those who are with the needy. If you're not with them, you're going to find yourself in the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right from the beginning. This is the challenge of Islam to its society. And other surahs like Surah Al-Muddathir, a Meccan surah, they say, مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ, what has brought you into this hell? And they just say two things again. لَمْ نَكُ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ وَلَمْ نَكُ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ. That's it. We didn't used to pray to Allah, the One, and we didn't used to feed the needy. That's it. And that's why right in the beginning of Islam, before there was any zakat, what was the mark of Iman and the mu'mineen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. That what it meant to be a mu'min, and there's no zakat revealed or taught yet, is that there's a fixed portion of your own wealth that you always set aside just for those who need it. لِلسَّائِلِ, for those who ask, وَالْمَحْرُومِ, and those who don't even ask. The idea is being a mu'min meant you know that this money of yours, some of it has to go to those who need it, and some of them will come on your door, and some of them you have to go to their door to make sure that they're okay. And this is the theme of many, many surahs within the Holy Quran. And I want to recite one surah again, just to really illustrate how central this is. An entire surah. It's a short one that we all know and recite. Starts, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين. Have you seen, have you considered, have you observed the one who rejects the deen? And the deen here means that judgment, the day of the fair recompense, the day when you're paid back exactly what you used to be doing. Have you seen the one who rejects the deen? Do you want to know what his mark is? These are his marks. فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ. That person is the one who's harsh to the orphan. وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. And he is the one that doesn't urge people to feed the needy. I'll go back to the end and I'll come back to the beginning. But just to make it clear right now, only two things. This is the mark externally of not believing you're going to stand before Allah. And it's all about where you are with those people whom, if you're good to them or not, you're not going to get great praise for it. The orphan has no dad that will reward you for buying him an ice cream. You did it only for the sake of Allah. This is where the mark is. And then the surah makes this very interesting jump almost. Then it says, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. And so woe on those who pray. That's also a very shocking statement. Woe on those who pray. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِ الَّذِينَ هُمْ الَّذِينَ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ يُرَاءُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Those people who are forgetful of their prayers. They don't give their prayers real importance. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. Those who pray because they want to be seen to pray. وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ. And they are the people who, the small acts of kindness, they don't do. It's a really shocking surah of some very odd statements. Let's try and tie it together. Let's start from the end. Ma'un are little forms of assistance that we might do for each other. The scholars say it's little things, like for example, sharing utensils. You know, if somebody says, do you have a spoon or do you have a screwdriver I can borrow? And you can't be bothered to go in the shed and look. So you say, you know what, I actually don't have one. You find that's the easier thing to say. You don't want to give a little bit of assistance. Why is little bit of assistance so important here? Because what the surah is saying is as follows, if you tie the thread together, that if we're really praying properly and we give our prayers importance, it will make us live as if we understand we will be meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the deen. And if we know we'll be meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has to have a consequence in us. And the consequence in us is that we hasten to do as much good as we can, and we don't distinguish between the grand things that people are going to praise us for and the little thing that no one's going to remember. That's the mark of Iman. That's why this surah focused on the ma'un, the little bits of kindness. It's the little things that will separate Iman from kufr. Because every chieftain of the chieftains that were attacking Islam in its early days would slaughter camels and show how generous they were. But the point is, would they do the little things that no one's going to remember? That is Iman. Why is the mark of Iman and Judgment Day with the orphan? Because of what I said. There's no one that's going to congratulate you. There's no one that's going to reward you. There's no one there to represent this person. Your kindness to him is only because you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the orphan is the mark between Iman and Kufr. Or the miskin, the person who's just out on the street, you walk by or you don't walk by, no one's going to remember this, except what's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So can you see the entire surah is putting your Iman in these little things. The things, because the real book of giving is about giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no big and small. There's just what is it that will help you. The Prophet ﷺ, he described Judgment Day. He said, a day will come and you will be before Allah and there will be no translator. And you'll look forward and you'll see the fire. And he said, ﷺ, ittaqun nar walau bishiqqi tamra. Keep that fire away from you, even if all you have is half of a date. Half of a date. You know, you break fast. You have half a date. You give your brother, hey, why don't you have this half date? That's it. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, this is where protection comes from. It's about the little things. And I don't mean to negate the big things, I'll come to them. But this is the differentiator. It's the fact that the Quran leaves within the heart of its reciter a map of what really is real. And when you see that map drawn again and again and again and again, the Quran pushes you. And it pushes you to do as much good as you can with whatever you have. And it doesn't matter if people see or they don't see. In fact, the Quran says, وَإِن تُخْفُوهَا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. If you hide the good, it's even better. That's the mark. And so the secret of the book of giving is the sincerity between a person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the great sage said, Ibn Ata'illah, قُدِّسَ سِرُّهُ, مَا قَلَّ عَمَلٌ بَرَزَ مِنْ قَلْبٍ زَاهِدٍ وَمَا كَثُرَ عَمَلٌ بَرَزَ مِنْ قَلْبٍ رَاغِبٍ. No deed, there is no deed which will ever be small if it issues from a heart that has no attachments to this world. Anything that's purely for Allah is great, and that's what the book of giving says. That's why you just do the good, as simple as that, and that's the mark of Iman. And as for the heart that's desirous of what this world has, nothing that heart does will ever be great. It will always be just a little bit. That's why the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, don't ever speak ill of my companions. He said, because if you spent the whole worth of all of Mount Uhud in gold, in the path of Allah, it will not equal the handful that they spent. It won't even equal the half handful that they spent, because they spent in privation. They spent when they had nothing. And they spent on the side of a Prophet ﷺ when it looked like year after year they were defeated, or they were surrounded, or there were conspiracies, or there were armies, and they only had a little bit to offer this cause. They didn't have a history of civilization like we do. They only had the promise of a future which they believed in, and they laid the foundation for that future that we find ourselves celebrating today. That's why whoever spends in privation, whoever spends when they don't even have, whoever spends hoping in Allah's promise, whoever spends laying the foundation that others will reap, that is the great spending. And so the giving, the book of giving says, what is really great, you'll never know it until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it's just do the good, do the good, do the good. And that's why the Holy Quran, if you want to summarize its entire simple moral impetus, it is just this much. It is direct yourself to Allah in worship and do whatever good you can on this earth before you wrap up. Or in the verses, the words of Surah Al-Hajj, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you've believed, irka'u, bow, wasjudu, prostrate, wa'budu rabbakum, humble yourself, lower yourself in devotion to the Lord who nurtures you and takes care of you. That's between you and Allah. وَفْعَلُوا الْخَيْرِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And do the good, that hopefully you will succeed. That's all of Islam. It's what's between you and Allah, and then whatever good you can do to any human, Muslim or non-Muslim, to any creature, human or non-human, to anything in the world, whatever good you can do, do it. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that a prostitute of Bani Israel was forgiven because she gave a drink to a dog from her shoe. That is the impetus of Islam. Entire surahs are just built on this theme of just do the good as much as you can. Don't count big and small. If your heart is clean, everything is big. Entire surahs like Surah Al-Zalzala. Surah Al-Zalzala, you would know, it's a very short surah, we all know it. It describes in very short terms that there's a final earthquake. The earth will shake like it's never shaken. People will be wondering, what on earth is she doing? She's never behaved like this before. On that day, she will answer, I'm doing this because this is it now. This is the time that I've been told to wait for and to move for. On that day, people will see their deeds. All of that scene, just to say really one thing. Whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it. They will appreciate it. They'll be happy that they did it. Whoever does an atom's weight of bad will see it. And they'll be really sorrowful that they do it. This one surah, the tafsir books mention that someone heard this surah and said, this is enough for me, and went off. This is enough. There was a rabbi who converted to Islam in early Islam, and he lived in the caliphate of the early companions. His name was Ka'b al-Ahbar. And he said, this surah, the short surah I've just given you the full translation of, he said, this surah summarizes all of the Torah and the Injil and the Zabur. This is revelation, this is it. It is to give you a map, to tell you what is true, and to push you to realize that whatever you do for Allah is great. That's it. And so the book of giving, it lays out the real criterion of what is great and what is small. And it gives the most beautiful points of etiquette when it comes to giving. And among the etiquettes of giving is the fact that because it really is for between you and Allah, is to realize that you need Allah to accept it from you. Or in the verse of Surah Al-Mu'minun, الَّذِينَ يُؤْتُونَ مَا آتَوْا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ وَجِلًا أَنَّهُمْ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ رَاجِعُونَ. They give whatever they give, but the mark of Iman is that because their hope and their eye is towards Allah, their hearts are trembling. Because they want to know, they're going to return back to Allah, will He accept it? They're turning to Him for acceptance. So part of the etiquette from the book of giving is that when we give our sadaqat, which means, as I've shown, all of our acts of goodness to everybody and everything around us, have a moment, and this is a reminder for myself before it's for you, where you ask Allah to say, oh Allah, please accept this from me. That is what it means, that you're thinking about that end moment. Connect to the end moment now, just with a simple prayer. Say, oh Allah, please accept it from me. It could be your half date. It could be anything more than this. Among the etiquettes that the Book of Giving tells us is لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You won't truly be righteous till you spend of what you love. And that's why one of the companions, they say he would give sugar to ants. And it looks like a small thing. That's what I said. You think, what's sugar to ants? But in reality, it was a huge thing. Because between him and Allah, he said, I love sugar. I want to give it to Allah's creatures. So the Book of Giving says, what is great is between you and Allah. Look for the thing which you love and give some of it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It could be items of clothing that you love, and a charity drive comes, say, hey, I'm going to put it into this for the sake of Allah, and you ask Allah to accept it. It could be other things. And for many of us, probably, it's time. The thing that we're so greedy for, we plan for, we calendar for, and someone knocks on your door or someone calls, for the sake of Allah, once in a while, perhaps more than that, forget the calendar and just pick up the phone or answer the door or just speak warmly with somebody. It's all right. You're spending of what you love. Ask Allah to accept it from you. This is from the etiquettes from the Book of Giving. Among these etiquettes, the Quran emphasizes so much, and I'll come to this in the latter part, which I'm going to come to shortly now, to talk about society and community, is that there's a huge emphasis in the Quran on giving to those who are near, dhawil qurba. The Quran places so much importance on family, so much importance on family. And the Quran was saying this in Mecca, when the enemies were family, because it was all a big extended tribe. And so the Quran always came with the message of Silatul Rahim, that yes, we are challenging what is wrong in this society, but we will always honor the tie of family. And the Quran is the book of family, and families of the most sacred ties in Islam. And so the idea of what the Book of Giving emphasizes is, don't just think about what comes, again, what people will notice or where your eye has gone far off. Think of what is near, because there's ties here that are sacred. Make sure that your ties are connected. There's ties to family, there's ties to neighbor, there's ties in your old house, your own household. The Prophet ﷺ said, there's a dinar you might spend in the path of Allah, and you might spend it on your family. And the family typically means the wife. And he says the best one is the one you spend on your wife. And so these are all ties. You see, the things that we spend most of our lives doing, we earn, we spend on family, we feed kids. This is all that Islam is. It's the devotion to Allah, and it's seeing to these ties. What is missing maybe is our connecting this back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Saying to Allah, please accept from me what I've done for my family. Please accept from me that I've been all day at work so I could feed my children, be good to my spouse, or however these relations work. This is important. This is dear. And this is of the essential messages of the Holy Quran. From the etiquettes we find in the Book of Giving, which I've hinted at, and it comes again in Surah Al-Baqarah, is that when we give, don't only give to those who come on your TV screen with appeals, or they come outside your mosque and they come with their hand. This is also there, and it's good. But also realize we have to give to people who don't come to us. Because the message of Islam is that we should build, and I'll come to this shortly, a community where people find cause and meaning, that the community gives them a sense of dignity. People shouldn't have to beg. We should catch them before they beg. People are discouraged from begging. People are told it's sinful to beg if you have your food for the day. At least that's what the classical fiqh book said. You shouldn't be begging if you can feed yourself today. But shame on us if then tomorrow they have to beg. We should catch them before the next day when they don't have that meal. This is the idea. The Book of Giving says, look out and make sure you understand how to catch people before they fall. And the last thing of the etiquettes I wanted to share was about the sadaqat. I've already hinted at this. إن تبدوا الصدقات فنعماه وإن تخفوها وتؤتوها الفقراء فهو خير لكم ويكفر عنكم من سيئاتكم. That if you give your charities openly, it's good for you. And if you give it secretly and people don't see it, and you give it to those in need, it's even better for you. And so in the Book of Giving, what's it telling you always? It's what's between you and Allah. Keep it as pure as you can. Keep it as clean as you can, and you only will get the rewards of this. And one more etiquette from the book of giving is that when you give these charities, you don't see that you've done any favor to the person whom you've given it to. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal adha. It says, once you've given these charities, don't cancel it. Why would you want to do the work, earn the money, give the charity, and then cancel it? How do you cancel the charity? It says, bil manni wal adha, which is by reminding people of how much you've done for them, so they feel belittled by that. And then to take that charity as an excuse to be harsh towards them, or to put them down, to think, well, you obviously, they need you and you don't need them, as if there's sort of hierarchy that charity has given you. The book of giving flips this. We need them and they don't need us. So all of this, what I've tried to give in the little time, is some indicator of why it is that engaging the Holy Quran necessarily leads to giving. Giving in the most expansive way possible with what a person has. It could be the giving of food, and it could be the giving of other things. And it could be, in the words of the Prophet ﷺ, the giving of your smile and your warmth, which for some people is the best thing you could ever give them. Now I'm going to come to zakat. Where does zakat fit into all of this? Zakat and the rules of zakat were taught in Medina. So zakat builds on all of this ethos which I've been describing, but it's more specific now. And when we talk about zakat, we are now going to talk about society, community, and civilization. The Prophet ﷺ, when he went to Medina, he laid the foundations for a new civilizational order, a new way of organizing people in the world, a way that is directed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a way that ensures fairness, harmony, and growth for the people who live there, and peace. He said this order was built upon 5. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, Bunya al-Islamu ala khamsin. Islam is built upon 5. And we call these the 5 pillars. And we learn about them when we're children, typically, which is the shahada, to testify that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. It's to pray your daily prayers, it's to give the zakat, to fast in Ramadan, and to perform the hajj. These 5. These 5, we think about them, and we learn about them, and we conceive about them as ways to ensure that our relationship with Allah is healthy, is strong, and we're connected, and we do what we basically need to do between us and Allah as individuals. This is correct. But it's more than that. These pillars are the foundations for the Islamic civilizational order. These pillars are the foundations of what it means to build a community of faith. These pillars are at the heart of a duty we all have. And I'm going to come to that duty. When it comes to the prayer is the greatest of Islam's institutions, of Islam's social institutions. Because we pray together. For the sake of the prayer, we have this incredible, beautiful building we are currently occupying. It's a masjid. The Prophet ﷺ, the first thing he established in Medina was the masjid. It's the beginning of the new order. The symbolism of the masjid is incredible. This space, which I'm sitting on, no one can come, no king, no ruler, nobody, no founder, no one who paid whatever they paid can come here and say, this is mine. Get off this spot. No one can say that. Because the masjid belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise it is not a masjid. It is a space of land dedicated to Allah. No one owns it. And because no one owns it, we all sit here as equals. It doesn't matter that I'm not from Cambridge or I'm from Cambridge. This mosque is mine as much as it is yours. That's what's so beautiful about the masjid. The masjid tells everyone, if you believe in Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is yours and you're an equal here. And you're welcome here and you're part of us. The masjid is the beginning of an understanding of ummah. We are united beyond color, beyond language, beyond profession, beyond income, beyond dress. We are one in these walls because we believe in Allah and His Messenger. The masjid is the anchor of ummah. This is really important. Historically, the masjid gave birth to the university. Universities started in the masjid. It was the free space that no one could own. So the circles of learning started in the masajid. And then they moved out and the Muslims built universities. And then the Crusaders learnt about the universities and took them back to the West, or at least that's what some of the narratives are, as the origin of the universities of Oxford and the other universities of the West. It came from the masjid. It came from the masjid. It's the greatest institution. It's an incredible institution. The courthouse was in the masjid. According to the books of fiqh, if you have a dispute with your neighbor, you come here. This is your malja. You want to solve a problem in life, you come here. And you'll find the qadi and he will resolve your matters for you. And then the courthouse became separate. It all started here. In the great mosques, in the whole cities of Islam, you'll find the great bazaars outside, the great marketplaces. And in Britain today, the great mosques will be where you'll find the halal meat and the restaurants, and you'll find the charities, and you'll find the businesses, and you'll find the enterprises, you'll find the media offices. That is the masjid. It is an anchor to an ummah. It is the anchor that you are together as one. Ramadan is a month of personal devotion, but it's a social month. It's the month when we eat together more than any other time. When this mosque is full, more than any other time. It's the month of a charge throughout the entire community. It's not just personal. Hajj is the gathering of the worldwide ummah. When you see that we are all internationally one. Zakat is a cornerstone of this vision. That's why zakat is given, not just charity in general now. Zakat is given Muslim to Muslim, believer to believer. Zakat is strengthening a particular tie. You could call it the tie of ummah, or the tie of the family of faith, that we are one. And this tie is sacred, and the tie has to be honored, and the tie is a duty. And so the message of zakat is, whoever is sitting here today, if any of them falls upon hard times, and any one of us could do that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises and He lowers as He wills, they should know that, or any of us should know that, and we should all know that, if it happens to us, we should have the comfort that we have a community that will catch us. That is the duty of zakat, that Muslims can feel dignified. Muslims can feel they belong to a group which will be there for them. Muslims feel a tie. There is a group I owe a duty of care to. I'm not on my own. I have responsibilities and I have care. That is the message of Islam. That is the civilization of Islam. That is why Islam is built on these five. And that's why zakat and salat are the most paired of the duties in the Holy Quran, 28 times. Salat and zakat. And that's why zakat was so emphasized once it was revealed. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, we were told to pray and to give zakat. Whoever doesn't give zakat has no prayer. That's narrated from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. It was of the most emphasized of matters in Islam. So emphasized, and this is the reason. So that when the Prophet would leave the earth, alayhi salatu wasalam, he's left a civilizational order that can only grow now. That being a Muslim is a community of dignity. Whoever wants to join is welcome. And that's the first pillar, which is the shahada. What does the first pillar say? It says, whoever utters these two words, that Allah is one and Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is the messenger of Allah, he is of you. And you can't question them. And you can't investigate them. And you can't say, but last night and yesterday you were, and last year you used to do. Nothing. They utter the word, they're in. And if they're in, you have to look after them. That's what the zakat says. And they're in your masajid. And you break fast with them. Can you see why bunya al-Islamu ala khamsin? That's why Islam is built on 5. It's the order of dignity, faith, and strong ties. Whoever is here finds meaning in being here, finds care in being here. This is the da'wah of the pillars. And that's why they were the most emphasized of things. That's why our Master Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, his most major legacy was his refusal to accept that people should think they can withhold their zakat. And he sent armies against any tribe that claimed we no longer have to pay zakat. This was a campaign for the sake of the needy. It was the most historical campaign. No one can withhold the haqq of the fuqara al-Muslimin. The needy Muslims have a right and they must get it. It's of the most emphasized matters of Islam. It's of the most central matters of Islam. And if you look at the word zakat, zakat as a word, it means purification and growth. Why does it mean purification? Because what the message of zakat is, it says as time passes over your wealth, it no longer all belongs to you. A part of it is the property of the fuqara al-Muslimin. A part of it belongs to the needy Muslims. If you do not give it to them, you are eating money that's not yours. It's as if you are usurping somebody else's wealth. And your food, your clothing, your expenditure is all filthified because you're eating what is not yours. Zakat has to go. It has to go to those who need it, but it goes to build these ties. This izz of Islam, this triumph of Islam, that being a Muslim is you are part of a network of care. And that's why the classical fiqh, all of the schools of law, they said that the zakat is paid locally. It's paid in the area where you live, so you build these ties, real ties, not just virtual ties, real ties. That nobody in your neighborhood or nobody who prays next to you in the mosque should be forced to beg or should have to suffer in silence. We have to, in each community, either all of us or some of us, be specialized in what are the needs of our community. So that over time, the message of salat and zakat leads to a real, healthy, strong, nurtured community of the faithful. This is the da'wah of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Yadullahi ma'al jama'a. The hand of Allah is with the group. وَإِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَمَعَ الْوَاحِدِ وَهُوَ مِنَ الْإِثْنَيْنِ أَبْعَدِ. If a person is just by themselves, the devil will be constantly troubling them. And if two believers are together, the devil is further away because they'll remind each other. And so the whole Shari'ah of Islam, the whole Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is how can people come together? Because when believers are together, their faith is protected and their faith is nurtured. They draw off of each other and the faith grows. That's why of the most important imperatives for us is to build healthy communities of faith, is to build strong ties of Iman. And that's the best thing we can do for the generation that will come after us, so that they learn about Islam not as outcasts, which is the most hard of all things, but they learn about Islam within a community where they feel safe and they feel protected and they find belonging and they find meaning and then find dignity and they find ultimately Allah and His Messenger. That's why Bunya al-Islamu ala khamsin. This order of salat and zakat, what happened? So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, as I've indicated to the example of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, they gave the most important things to these ideas, especially the salat and the zakat. But what happened? Wind down the history. What happened? As the history folded, like I said to you, the masjid gave birth to incredible social institutions. The lodgings of the spiritual sessions would happen here, then they became khanqas and zawiyas. The lessons happened here, then they became madrasas and universities. The qada happened here, then they became courthouses. I've told you how the masjid gave birth to public institutions for public good. The zakat also did that. The zakat laid the foundation for a strong community where people saw that when you spend just a little for the public good, there's so much that happens in the public good. That's an order, a civilization of charity. And when people see that, they realize there's more than we can do for even more good. And so the civilization of charity leads to a charitable impetus. And that's why Islamic civilization, as it unfolds, more than zakat, what it's remembered for is the waqf. The waqf is the endowment. It's when people set aside producing property like land, farms, or etc., producing property that it produces an income and they dedicate it to the public good. So universities, mosques, veterinary institutions, lodgings for women who were widows, care houses for the orphan, schools for the blind. This was Islamic civilization, not paid by taxes, not paid by government, paid by community through charitable endowments. The order of salat and zakat on which Islam is built as you follow it through, what it builds is an order of charity. And an order of charity is an order of growth. And growth is the other meaning of the word zakat. It's growth. The final thing I wanted to say, and I'll stop here, is that things are known by their opposites. And there's another kind of civilization which the Quran warns about tremendously. And it's a civilization founded on growth, but a cancerous growth. What's the word for cancerous growth? It is riba. And that's why the last verse is revealed to the Prophet ﷺ as he left this earth were the verses about riba. And so you get a sense of how much Islam is against the exploitative taxing of people. Riba is the opposite of zakat. In Arabic, they both mean growth. But zakat is the growth of giving, and riba is seeking growth through exploitation. Riba is usury. It's giving somebody and demanding more in return. It's exploitative. It typically goes from those who have to it's a movement of money in an exploitative way, typically from those who have less to those who have more. Riba has its own civilizational map, like zakat does. In these Western lands, riba, because the church, the Catholic Church, was as opposed to riba as the Islamic teachings, as were most religions. In these lands, the door to riba opened in a very little way in the 16th century. They said, you know what? The riba that's against the Bible, the riba that's against our teachings, is the big riba, when you charge like large amounts of return. Like here's a loan, give him back 100%. But the little things, they called it interest. And they said the little thing is fine, it's just to help us in our financing. This order started from a little bit. I told you the order of zakat starts from a little bit, the 2.5%, and leads to a particular civilizational map. That order also started from a little bit, but it led to where we are today. Where we are today is an economic order the like of which the world has never seen. And we're all suffering if we think about it. Because the way we are today, what is the order about? The order of riba, the order of usury that we currently inhabit. We inhabit a system where as soon as money is born, if you like, into the economy, there is a debt greater than it that also comes into the economy. Meaning in any one moment, there is more debt than there is money, always. This is what the system of riba is. The money is born with riba. You must pay back more than the money that's been created. What does that do to the civilization that we inhabit? It has many consequences. Among the consequences is that how are we going to pay off this debt? How do you pay off debt? Money hasn't been created yet to pay it off. What do? You have to you have to make an excuse for more money to be created. What you have to do, you have to monetize the world. You see trees outside, they're no good to you. A tree in the park is not going to pay off your debt. If you chop it down and you monetize it, you pay off your debt. So the order of usury is not going to be settled until we've cut down all of the trees. And we've harvested, we've captured all of the fish. We've killed all of the creatures. The issue with the environment isn't that people don't like trees. The point is that there's a burden of debt, and we have to pay off the debt. And you only pay off the debt by making an excuse for someone to create money to pay off your debt. And that is by monetizing nature. Riba is a cancerous growth. A cancer is a cell that only exists to grow. It has no benefit for you. And as it grows and grows until it kills you. That's it. That's the logic of riba. This riba system won't stop until we've destroyed the planet. It's as simple as that. The system is designed for this. It's designed to make war so you can pay off debt. It's designed to make people find ways to monetize their relationships. So in the olden days, if people wanted to work and they had kids, you say, oh, I'll look after your kids, you can work. But nowadays you say, oh, childminding, I can make money off of this favor. I'm not saying it's wrong to be a childminder, brother, it's a wonderful thing to do. But what I mean to say is, we are now finding ways to monetize what used to be normal neighborly behaviors. Or for example, tuition has become a huge industry And it used to be just helping out your neighbor's son, or we're just helping out each other. What I'm trying to get at is these little things, our little attitudes to money and charity and society will create a way of being in the world. We are inhabiting the way of being of riba, whether we like it or not, whether you have a bank loan or not. It affects how lonely you might feel in the world, because riba is about atomizing. Because one of the ways we pay off the debt is we evaluate our homes very, very much. And then everyone has to work. The man works, and the woman works, and the kids have to find a way quick to go to university and only educated so that they can work. It's informed how we conceive of being in the world, this civilization of debt. And I don't want to paint an awfully dark picture, but I want you to understand when we talk about even mental illness, it all comes from alienation. It comes from the fact that we don't have time anymore. We have to constantly find ways to monetize and to get by. This is not by coincidence. Living in the world doesn't have to be like this. It's because this is the opposite of zakat. And so the Holy Quran contrasts zakat and riba more than once. Not only are they synonymous in meaning growth, but they're opposites. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِبَا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُوَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. The riba you give, the usury you give, seeking a growth thereby, it has no growth as far as Allah is concerned. وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. But the zakat you give, seeking Allah's pleasure, those are the ones who will find multiplication. Allah is saying the real wholesome growth, which we've hinted at from the beginning of this presentation, the growth for you, the growth in faith, the growth in community, and the growth of growth as well, that you have, that the society flourishes, it's in the charitable order. The charitable civilization has real growth. The riba civilization will never truly have growth. So we enjoy luxuries in this part of the world because other parts of the world are paying for it with their debts. It's not real growth. And our luxuries are being paid through bubbles that don't really have any assets in them. And they will pop. And when they pop, we also have no growth. So there is no growth. It's an illusion. And so the Quran is warning us. The growth of charity is the real growth. The growth of exploitation will never have growth. And so why I'm ending with this view is that what are we going to do about this? The contrast I've made now shows that the topic of riba and usury is not simply about can I get a mortgage? That's you and your personal. But there's a particular civilization we've been tasked to build. And the civilization built on these pillars is a civilization of wholesome community. And with all these challenges we find around us, which I'm saying a lot of them go back to this exploitative economy, we might not have the power to overturn it. We might be too weak just to have a new banking order. But you have to understand that the resistance is in community. The resistance is forming a space of charitable giving, where people are giving for each other and achieving growth through giving. This masjid is the space of resistance. This masjid is the place that says you don't have to feel alienated or unknown. Just find peace now. Come into these walls and find peace. And our duty is to take the peace outside of these walls. The prayer ends with peace. The prayer in this masjid, the final uttering of that devoted being with Allah is you come down to earth and you greet everyone around you. The salam is greeting people with peace. Peace is what we get from the prayer. Peace is what we find in the masjid. Peace is what we have to deliver now. And we're going to deliver it how? Through what I've said in the beginning, which is the charitable impetus. The idea that between you and Allah, all that there is how much good you can do to everybody, every human being and every creature, as much good as you can. You will be a source of peace and comfort as an individual. But we have a collective duty now, that we have to make Iman a cause for peace. And that is by making sure that whoever is a believer feels connected to a community that will take care of them. Feels connected to a family that they really are a part of. And that's the duty of zakat. So think of zakat as our duty to each other. And we have to make a plan to build a zakat system for our communities. Why am I calling it a system? Is that whether you only pay once a year, but you feel the comfort that you're within a system, you will be taken care of. That's it. It catches all of us. We have a duty to build that here, and that is at the core of protecting our faith, our families, and those who will come after us, and creating a haven for whoever wants to join this group of the faithful. That's why my message to you all as well on the question of zakat is that at least some of your zakat, pay it here, pay it where you live. Start your journey in community, because that's our duty. And the final thing I want to say, because we started with a reflection on the Holy Quran, the final thing I want to say is a surah in the Holy Quran, which according to Imam al-Shafi'i summarizes the entire message of the Holy Quran, which is a short surah called Surah Al-Asr. And the surah says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wal Asr, which for some scholars is a reference to the Asr time, the end of the day. As a metaphor, in trade, you do business in the day, and at the end of the day, you know, did you profit or did you lose? And life is like that. So the Asr is about the end of life. Did you profit or did you lose? So it says, wal Asr innal insana lafi khusr. At that end of the day, the human being generally is in loss. They haven't made the most of this life, except for those who consciously try to do that profit. And how do they do that? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Except for those who believed and did excellent deeds, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And they formed community. If you want to really be profitable in this short life that we have, you have to form community. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ means they reminded each other. They were a group of the faithful. They reminded each other of the haqq. What is the absolutely true? The absolutely true is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The absolutely true is what connects us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. That is the truth of giving that we are talking about today. They remind each other of the haqq, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And they remind each other of sabr. And sabr in its most basic meaning is not giving up your resolve. That's why we have to form community. Because each of us will have a moment when you're knocked in life. And when you're knocked in life, you might want to give up. You might not want to come to the mosque. You might not want to be knowing about praying and so on. We have to be there for each other, so when someone is knocked, the brother is there or the sister is there to take them by the hand. We have to form community. If we form community of faith, we will be successful in life and we will have lived a life worth living, in Surah Al-Asr's language. If we don't form community, if we aren't concerned about this collective, our life will have some profit and will have some regrets. And so that's ultimately the challenge of giving and the duty of zakat.